education, particularly the MBA 237-204 classes. This event is made possible with the partnership of the Ateneo de NAGA University Graduate School and the Ateneo de NAGA University Center for Local Governance. Just a few reminders before we proceed. This online event is open to the public with free registration. The webinar can be accessed live via the Ateneo CLG YouTube channel and the Ateneo CLG Facebook page for both registered and non-registered participants. For registered participants, kindly leave a comment. Your full name, for example, my name, Jake Resikat, have registered present on your preferred viewing platform for your attendance. To raise your queries, comment them on the platform that you are using. We highly encourage everyone to post in your questions while the presentation is being. The moderator will be acknowledging your questions and address them to our speakers during the open forum. We will be releasing the link form at the end of the webinar. Please issue certificates to those who have registered, confirmed, attended, completely filled out the evaluation form. Please take note that you need to complete the 3 requirements for the certificates to be released. Please give us time to prepare your. Before we get started, I would like to invite Carla May Bulanos to lead us for an invocation. This shall be quickly followed by anthem.
Let us put ourselves in the presence of the Lord. Lord, we praise and give you thanks for allowing this day to happen, despite the pandemic, and even through this virtual means. Thank you for gathering everyone here today and making sure that all of us are well, safe, and healthy. We ask for your guidance as we go through the activities planned for this learning event. Kindly give wisdom to the speakers, reactors, and participants here with us today as we all do our part in understanding more extensively the topics to be discussed. We pray for the successful outcome of this webinar and other future webinars that the Ateneo de NAGA University shall organize for the continuous learning of its student and community. May you inspire us to do our best and remind us that what we do today and what we will accomplish is for the greater good and the greater glory of you. We lift this event to you, Lord. This we pray in Jesus' name. Amen.
Bayang magiliw, perlas ang silanganan, alab ng puso, sa dibdib mo'y buhay. Lupang hindi lang, tuyang ka ng magiting, sa manluluping, di ka pasisihin. Sa dagat at tundok, sa simoy at sa langit mong buhaw, may nilang ang tula at awit sa maglayang minamahal. Ang isang ng matawag mo'y tagumpay na nagdiningin. Ang bituin at araw niyang kailan pang may di magdidilim. Lupa ng araw ng walhalik pagsinta, buhay ay langit sa piling mo. Ang ligaya na pagmay nakahapin, ang mamatay ng dahil sa'yo.
Again, good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar on full devolution. I am Jake Resikat, and I will be your host for today. Today's webinar is actually a culmination of the joint effort between the PE 204 and the MBA 237 classes to provide a joint service learning event for which the public can benefit greatly. We felt that there's no full devolution. As emphasized, this webinar is to provide awareness on the impact of the devolution of its services into the LGUs, realign and recalibrate the objectives of the planned devolution, and provide appreciation on the full-scale impact of the implementation of the proposed call on Dr. Malusi Barcelian for her welcome message.
I am pleased to welcome you all to our webinar on full devolution of the local government units and the implications to its services, with the Regional Director of the National Economic and Development Authority, or NEDA, of Region 5, and the Provincial Director of the Department of the Interior and Local Government, or DILG, Camarines Sur, Ms. Agnes Tolentino and Ms. Melody Relucio, respectively, as resource speakers. The Mandanas ruling, which will be implemented by 2022, highlights that the increasing share of national government tax revenue will be transferred to local governments. This will address inequality in financial resources among local government units, improve the capacity of LGUs, and enhance transparency and accountability, which are considered significant in improving decentralization. Thus, we have to look at the implementation of the Mandanas ruling not just as a transfer of resources, but as an opportunity to strengthen decentralization and improve social services. To quote Section 1 of the Executive Order 138, the full devolution of certain functions of the executive branch to local governments, creation of a committee on devolution, and for other purposes, the national government is fully committed to the policy of decentralization enshrined in the Constitution and relevant laws, which are aimed at one, developing capabilities of local government units to deliver basic social services and critical facilities to their constituents, increase productivity and employment, and promote local economic growth. And also number two, ensuring accountability, competence, professionalism, and transparency of local leaders through the development of institutional systems that uphold good governance and strengthen their capacities for managing public resources. Our resource speakers will share more about the Mandanas ruling and how this can lead to better coordination in planning and implementation across levels of government, and how it can improve the lives of people and communities, especially those considered to be far from economic centers, growth centers. So let us all learn about the full devolution this morning, and let us all be inspired with this line from Rohini Nilikani, citing that we cannot be mere consumers of good governance. We must be participants, we must be co-creators. With this, I formally welcome you all to this online activity. Again, marhay na aga sa inyong gapos.
Thank you, Ma'am Malu, for that warm welcome message. We are honored and thankful for this opportunity that you have given us to organize this insightful event for us to appreciate and understand more the benefits and impact of Executive Order 138, which is the full devolution of the LGUs. We have been mentioning full devolution without really providing context, but I think Ma'am Malu had provided already quite comprehensive introduction on what full devolution is. To provide us further guidance, we have invited actually speakers, as mentioned by Ma'am Malu, to provide us insights given their expertise on the subject matter. And our first speaker is currently the Regional Director of the National Economic and Development Authority Region 5, where she's posted since 2014. She's a career executive service official granted with rank 3 by the President in January 2018. Prior to her post in the Bicol region, She was with the NEDA Calabarzon region, where she served as Assistant Regional Director from January 2012 to May 2012, and as Officer in Charge, Regional Director from June 2012 to June 2014. She is professor at the Department of Community and Environmental Resource Planning, College of Human Economy to 2010. In her early years with the government, she had a long-year stint with the Department of Trade and Industry as Municipal Trade and Industry Officer, and shortly promoted to District Trade and Industry Officer. She holds a Master of Science in Urban Survey and Human Settlements Analysis from the International Institute for Aerospace Survey and Earth Sciences in the Netherlands, Bachelor of Laws from Aquinas University of Legazpi, and a Bachelor of Science in Human Ecology from the University of the Philippines, Los Baños. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Regional Director Agnes Tolentino.
Thank you very much, Sir Jake. To the organizers of this webinar, Dr. Malu Barceliano, the Dean of the Ateneo de NAGA University Graduate School and the Director for Center for Local Governance, to the students of Masters of Public Administration and Masters of Business Administration of the Ateneo de NAGA. Thank you for this invitation and for this opportunity to share with you our thoughts on the, let me rephrase that, full devolution of services to the local government units. And first, I'd like us to talk about its impacts on the devolution of the services or the services that's being delivered by our local government units. So for my discussion for this morning, I would be focusing more on the framework from where these services are supposed to be delivered. So that would be presenting to you the regional development plan, as this actually provides the regional development framework as also adapted from the Philippine Development Plan. And the second part of my presentation would be the Executive Order 138 and some of its highlights. But I would not dwell directly on the implications on its services, but I hope that would my colleague from the ILG, Provincial Director, would be discussing more of that, as it's more of their turf. Okay. Now, let me start off with the Regional Development Plan. If you'd allow me to share my screen, please. Okay. Let me give you some time to do that. Okay, so you have it on your screen. Sir Jake, is it good?
Opo, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so as I said earlier, I will be starting off with the Regional Development Plan, as it provides us the framework for the services or for the governance of at the level of our local government units. There's a Chapter 8 of the Bicol Regional Development Plan for 2017 and 2022 talks about ensuring people-centered, clean, and efficient governance. For our students there, I'd like you to take note of this, as later on, this is where we will be taking off as we discuss, hopefully in our exchange, the implications of the services that you really wanted to know about. Okay, so that's for Chapter 8. Now, this slide shows you the pre-pandemic development landscape. So this is really based on Ambition Natin 2040. For the first time, we adopted, basically it's NEDA, but this is in collaboration with all the government agencies and even the participation of some of our civil society organizations. So we had the Ambition Natin 2040. This is a long-term vision for the country. It's its ambition. I think for some of you have already heard about the ambition natin 2040. So because we've been talking about this much, as this is really a guide for development planning, and it represents the collective aspirations of the Filipinos to enjoy a matatag, maginhawa at panatag na buhay para sa lahat. So within this time frame until 2040, there would be 4 administrations. So magi-elect po tayo ng 4 na presidente, no, sa loob ng panahon na ito. And actually, there were questions like, how would you be sure that the president would adopt that long-term vision that the NEDA and along with that and the others have actually prepared for our country? Well, the answer would be, it's in our hands. Depende po yan kung sino yung i-elect nating presidente. So sana ito din yung maging guide natin sa pagpili ng tamang presidente. Okay, so with that, let me go to the 4 plans. We have the 2017 and 2022. This would actually lay down the foundation for us to move towards attaining our vision in 2040. So there will be 3 others that will come after that. So actually by next year, NEDA again will be starting to prepare for the successor plan for the 2017 and 2022. Okay. So those are the pre-pandemic plans. Now, under the Philippine Development Plan and as cascaded to the Regional Development Plan, we have this overall development framework. On the top, you'd see that in 2040, we're being guided by the ambition natin 2040. For short, we just refer to it as matatag. This is our vision, to have a matatag, maginhawa at panatag na buhay para sa lahat. So for 2022, our goal here would be to lay down the foundation for inclusive growth, a high trust and resilient society, and a globally competitive knowledge economy. And under this, we have 4 pillars. We have the malasakit, pagbabago pillar, and patuloy na pag-unlad. Our governance would fall under the malasakit pillar. This is about enhancing the social fabric. And there are several strategies as they're presented, like one of which would be to ensure people-centered, clean and efficient governance. So I hope you'd remember that. That's what I presented earlier as really the main focus for the chapter 8. And under the malasakit pillar, we have another strategy, that of pursuing swift and fair administration of justice. And another strategy talks about promoting Philippine culture and values. And for the pagbabago pillar, we have other strategies as they're enlisted. I will not mention each one of them anymore. But let me just keep focus to the bedrock strategies. Those are the strategies that you see at the bottom. They're in pink or in red. And one strategy there would be ensuring peace and security. Second would be accelerate strategic infrastructure development. Third strategy, bedrock strategy, would be to ensure safety and to build resilience. And fourth is to ensure ecological integrity, clean and healthy environment. These are bedrock strategies because without establishing all this, peace and security, we say that we cannot have development if there's no peace and security. And of course, it has to be coupled with good infrastructure development and a safe and resilient environment. And of course, ecological integrity. So without all this, we could not really attain the vision that we wanted to have for our country. So that is the development framework. Let me now move on. So this is the specific framework to ensure the people-centered and the clean and efficient governance. We have our societal goal, which is to lay down the foundation for inclusive growth, a high trust and resilient society, and a globally competitive knowledge economy. And the intermediate goal would be to enhance the social fabric. And the sector outcome particularly would focus on the people-centered, clean, efficient, and effective governance. And the subsector outcomes would include a citizen that is fully engaged and empowered. This is the reason why we go into partnerships with our civil society and non-government organizations. And the other outcome would be administrative governance enhanced. Like the meritocracy that would have to be in place so that hindi yung who knows you know who so that you get in the position, but it's really based on competency and meritocracy. And third outcome would be seamless service delivery. That's that we see to be achieved at the level of the local government. And of course, the civil service is strengthened related to this with that earlier was saying about meritocracy and competency. And of course, there would be the strategies that will be, I will be later showing you. Okay. So what are the targets that we have under the plan for 2017 and 2022? And most likely, we will still be adopting some of these targets when we move on and formulate the next plan for the next administration. So the targets would be to include that there should be a percentage of the LGUs fully compliant with the full disclosure policy. We know that this is very important as regards the management of information within the local government units. And we're also looking at local government units being conferred with the seal of good local governance. I hope our DILG will touch more of that later. So, and also the local government units with performance financial management improvement plans. And the full implementation of the Ease of Doing Business Act, wherein when you go to a government office and requiring or asking for some services, this would actually govern on how fast they should be delivering that services to you. And the last bullet talks about the proportion of agencies compliant with Prime HRM. This Prime HRM is the program to institutionalize meritocracy and excellence in human resources management. So most of our government agencies are moving towards getting their Prime HRM levels. All right. So those are the targets. Now, what are the key strategies? Oh, by the way, let me just go back to those targets. Please also take note of that, as that would also later on have implications on the Pandanas ruling or the Executive Order 138. Of course, the Executive Order 138 is not here because this was formulated when we haven't been talking about EO 138. No, EO 138 was just passed recently, but we'll talk about that more later on. All right, so for the case strategies, still consistent for us to meet those targets, what should be done? Okay, the first would be to institutionalize feedback, complaints, and response mechanisms at all levels. Of course, we know that feedback is very essential for us to improve on the way that we do things. Second would be to strengthen public financial management reforms and results-based performance management. Public financial management reforms would talk about the utilization of the funds that's being released by the national government to our local government units. And third strategy would be to adopt a seamless service delivery approach. Like for the government agencies, it would be easy for us to coordinate or to collaborate so that we could deliver the services that's being required to the public. And next strategy would be to improve human resources management systems in the bureaucracy, and related to this would be the I mentioned earlier the Prime HRM. And the last strategy would be to promote the shared public service values. Public service values that we have to be competent enough and to observe the values of a public servant for us to deliver and to provide what is needed by the people. Now, there would be subsector strategies that under the earlier strategies that we have that I have presented. And when we talk about a citizenry that is fully engaged and empowered, this would be the subsector strategies under that. First would be to promote participatory and inclusive governance. We encourage everybody, especially like I said earlier, even the CSOs and the non-government organizations and even individuals who care enough uh, for good governance would have the chance and the opportunity to participate in governance. Okay. The second sub-strategy would talk about institutionalizing the feedback, complaints, and response mechanisms at all levels. And the third strategy would be to ensure public access to information. That's why we have the freedom of information as already passed as an issuance or a law by our government. The second strategy for administrative governance enhanced would have the following subsector strategies. One would be to strengthen the results-based performance management, public financial management, and accountability systems. Earlier, Dr. Malu has mentioned about building accountability among our local government units. And we know that this is in fact very, very important to look at when we're talking about local governance. The second subsector strategy is about promoting best practices on good governance. That's why there are also opportunities for sharing this as best practices among our local executives and the local government units. And they get the seal of good governance for that. Okay. And the third strategy would be to strengthen linkages between and among agencies. So we're talking about the national agencies here, basically. Okay, for the other sector on the civil service delivery we achieved, we have the subsector strategies to improve regulatory reforms. So that would see that there would be, in fact, there would also be systems for later on monitoring and evaluating that, in fact, the local government units have regulated services and doing this in accordance with the mandates of the government and all other laws that provides for good governance. And the second sub-strategy would be to improve productivity of the public sector. We really would like to change this mindset. Like some people would think that if you work for the government, okay, you just go from 8 to 5 and then collect your salary from on the 15th and the 30th. We are professionalizing government service, and this is we are really very much into meritocracy and competency these days. Okay. And of course, that leads us to this strategy for civil service strengthen, which is basically talking about improvement in the HRM, human resource management systems and processes, to develop and invest in human resource. And this is not just about training and other capacity development that's being provided to our government officials and employees, but also the opportunity to engage the other sectors to also invest in human resource development of the government. And of course, promoting shared public service values of competency and meritocracy, honesty and accountability, and integrity in the public service. Okay, so that ends my slide for the RDP, Regional Development Plan, and laying down the framework wherein we base our delivery of good services under good governance strategy. So let me move on to my next slide, where would now be about the Executive Order 138. But I would be brief about this now because my colleague from the LG would be talking about that as well. Okay. Okay, so let's now move on to the meat of this discussion. So this is the Executive Order number 138 and its implementing rules and regulations. So just some highlights on this very recent executive order, which was based on the Supreme Court ruling on the Mandanas Garcia case. So this is this is really talking more about full devolution. So full devolution of services to the local government unit. So if you would note in the title of this executive order, it's talking about certain functions of the executive branch to the local government. So it's not really all the functions of the national government that's being devolved to the local government. Well, I think this was really initiated by Governor Dodo Mandanas, because in our meeting with him, he was saying that, well, of course, the national government has devolved the functions to the local government unit, but there's something that was missing there. He said that, yes, the functions were devolved, but not the funds. So under this executive order number 138, there's this issuance also makes sure that the local government units would have the funds to deliver those services to the people. So what are the salient features of this executive order? Of course, there would have to be there's the delineation of the national government and the LGU role, so that there would be no overlap, and we would know who would really be accountable. So is it the national government or is it the local government unit? Okay, and under this executive order would also be the preparation of devolution transition plans. And this, the preparation of devolution transition plans is the responsibility of those concerned or affected national government agencies, and as well as by the local government units. And we also have the creation of the Committee on Devolution. But the Committee on Devolution is being chaired by the Department of Budget and Management, and the vice chairperson is the Department of Interior and Local Government, and the NEDA is just one of its members. Okay, and another feature of the EO 138 is the establishment of Growth Equity Fund. This would be discussed further. So let me move on with the other salient features. We also have the capacity building for the local government units, where the National Economic and Development Authority, my office is would have a big role for the LGUs. And the same in this other feature would be the strengthening of planning, investment programming, and budgeting linkage, as well as the monitoring and evaluation system. This is very much the work of NEDA, and this would form part of the big capacity building for LGUs that we would be doing. And of course, you'd be asking what would happen to some government personnel once the functions have been devolved to the local government units. So those are provided under the options for affected national government agencies personnel. Okay. So let me talk briefly about the policy of decentralization, because this is basically what's being addressed by the Executive Order 138. And as it says here on the slide, that the national government is fully committed to the policy of decentralization. And this policy of decentralization aims to develop the capabilities of our local government units in delivering the basic services and providing for the facilities to their constituents. So along with that, there is also the purpose to ensure accountability, competence, professionalism, and transparency of local leaders, through the development of institutional systems that will uphold good governance and strengthen capacities for managing resources. So what I've mentioned here, no, are really the values that we are promoting to them, no? The accountability, competence, professionalism, and transparency. So these are the guiding principles as embodied in the Executive Order 138. The first principle talks about the role of the national government, which is to set the national policy, develop the strategies, and service delivery standards, and of course, the assistance that would have to be provided to the LGUs and the overseeing them and the supervision that will not be taken away from the national government as one of its basic role and function. Okay, the second guiding principle talks about the devolution of the basic services and facilities to local government units. But let me bring you back to the title of the executive order. No, it says about certain services. No? So hindi po lahat ng services ay kasama doon. So that would be those will be the services that will be devolved to the local government units, along with determining the functional assignments between and among the different levels of government. Of course, you have the national government, you have the provincial, and you have the city and city and municipalities, and of course you still have their barangays. That would also be part of the system. And the third guiding principle talks about the national government being in close coordination with the local government units. And this would be for the formulation and pursuance of institutional development program to strengthen the capacities and capabilities of our local government units. The fourth guiding principle talks about the in any case that there would be ambiguities or unclear provisions in the executive order or in its implementation, the interpretation would always be resolved in favor of devolution. Okay, so those are the four guiding principles. Okay, now let me briefly talk about the coverage and functions and the services under the full devolution. Of course, this would cover all the local government units and departments, agencies, and instrumentalities of the executive branch. The NEDA is not included in those agencies that will have devolved function because we're an oversight agency, and in fact, we only have a regional office and we don't have the offices at the local level. So we're not included. But those agencies that are delivering the frontline functions, basically they are the ones who are included among those agencies. Okay, other coverage would be on the functions, basic services, and facilities which have already been devolved. So if you're familiar with Section 17 of the Local Government Code, this actually lists all the services that are included in the Executive Order 138 as part of the devolved functions. And the third bullet talks about the local governments that should be primarily and ultimately responsible and accountable for the provision of all basic services and facilities that have been fully devolved to them. And this will be in accordance with the minimum standards for service delivery that's being provided by the national government. And exception, of course, would be so the local government would not be primarily and ultimately responsible for those that are shared. There would be services that would be shared with the national government. Okay, if you go back to the salient feature as I presented earlier in my earlier slide, we're talking about the preparation of devolution transition plans, and this preparation as I said, no, will be done by the national government agencies and also by the local government units. So this is important to fully realize the goals of the executive order, or the purpose of the executive order 138. Without the DTPs, there would be difficulty in how to proceed with the devolution, with the implementation of the devolution of services. So the national government agencies would have their devolution transition plan, wherein the functions and the services to be devolved by level of LGUs will have to be outlined. And there would have to be standards for the delivery of the devolved services, or so that there would be uniformity across the LGUs. And the third would be talking about capacity development strategy for the LGUs and NGAs, because we know for a fact that the local government units will really be overwhelmed by these devolved functions from the national government. So they have to be, their capacity has to be enhanced. Okay. And okay, the next bullet talks about the framework for monitoring and performance assessment of LGUs. When you deliver the services, no, because based on some standards, there has to be metrics, no. Sukatin natin, are they delivering it based on the standards that's being provided? And the fifth bullet would be about organizational effectiveness proposal to strengthen the department or the agency and assuming the steering function. So nakita nyo dito, no, steering functions, because we still have to guide the local government units as regards the implementation of those functions which have been devolved to them from the national government agencies. Now, on the side of the local government units, in the preparation of the development transition plans, of course, this would have to be done in close coordination with the agencies concerned, and especially those that are really critical or very important to the local government units. And the purpose of these DTPs, of course, would be to guide, to serve as guide in monitoring and performance assessment of the local government units by the national government agencies concerned, also especially with the Department of Budget and Management and the DILG. And we hope to also bring in the CSOs and the NGOs to help out in the monitoring and performance assessment of the LGUs. Currently, no, the NEDA has the Regional Project Monitoring Committee, which where DBM and DILG is also participating as members. And we really have the NGOs and the CSO sitting with us when we do the monitoring. But basically, it's the monitoring of the government programs that we do, not just the infrastructure, but also the non-infra projects. So hopefully the same system will be adopted in also monitoring the performance of our local government units. Now, this is very important. This is really one of the very good feature of the Executive Order 138, the establishment of Growth Equity Fund. This is to, or the Committee on the Devolution is already talking about this, especially at the national level, and there has to be the National Expenditure Program provides for the Growth Equity Fund, and this will start its implementation when we have our 2022 GAA. The purpose of this Growth Equity Fund is to address problems of marginalization, unequal development, and high poverty incidents and disparities in fiscal capabilities of the local government units. You know, the local government units have different capacities when it comes to generating their own funds, you know, collecting the taxes and other fees that should be due them. So the national government has to provide this Growth Equity Fund so that they would be at par, or they would be able to fund the services that have been devolved to them. Because without this, ang laki ding difficulty ito sa ating local government units because they don't know where to get the money that they can use to efficiently deliver the services that have been devolved to them. So this growth equity fund will be released to the local government units, and there has to be this will be based on a guideline that will be issued by the Development and Budget Coordinating Committee or the DBCC. Itong DBCC po basically comprise ito ng DBM, ng NEDA, Department of Finance, that will determine how to release or paano i-distribute itong ating growth equity fund to all the local government units. Okay, another feature or very important feature of the Executive Order 138, this is in Section 11, would be to strengthening the planning, budgeting, and linkage and monitoring and evaluation systems. Under this strengthening planning, investment programming, and budgeting, we'll be looking at the vertical and horizontal linkages across different levels of government when it comes to development planning, investment programming, and budgeting. While the local government units will be doing this has to be aligned with the national government and other regional and local priorities. Kaya po, sabi ko nga kanina, ito po talaga yung pinaka-function din ng NEDA. Kaya kailangan din natin mag-guide ang ating local government units and also to capacitate them so that they would be able to deliver this mandate that's being required of them. So there would be the other circulars that are already existing, but some would need to be updated. And this will be the responsibility of the DILG, the DOF, my office, and of course the DBM, so that there would be harmonization of local planning, investment programming, and even resource mobilization, budgeting, and expenditure management, as well as recalibrating the synchronized local and regional planning and budgeting calendars accordingly. So hindi po pwedeng kanya-kanya po yung tayo doon sa pagbabudget, no, planning and budgeting, because we're still talking about one coffer, no, one source of money for the government. Kaya dapat sabay-sabay din natin itong pagpaplanuhan at observe all the fiscal resources guidelines that would help us achieve the equity that we wanted to achieve across LGUs and across levels. Okay, so under this strengthening planning investment programming, we would also be looking at results-based monitoring and evaluation system to be in place so that we'll eventually strengthen the conduct of evaluation in the performance and delivery of devolved functions and services. Okay, the Section 18, this is still one important feature in the executive order. So regarding the actions on the devolved functions, which would be how to proceed. No? So there would be scaling down, phasing out, abolition, and of strengthening. So when we do the devolution of services, there would be reduction, or yung scaling down would be reduction in the magnitude of function, program, projects of activity, and even eliminating some of the components of the program, or reduce geographical coverage, or demographic or clientele coverage, and even the types of services that would be rendered, or the level of output. So scaling down or minimizing. Phasing out would be talking about the gradual elimination or discontinuance of a function that might no longer be very necessary or very much needed in terms of delivering the devolved function. Okay, so gradual yung phase out. And the abolition would be the total discontinuance of a function or of a program, activity, or project. Strengthening would talk about increasing the target of a core function or its expected goods and services and the desired impact, or it could be also widening its clientele or the geographical coverage. So, and ito yung karang kabaliktaran dun sa scaling down. Okay, so this is some of the actions that will be undertaken when the devolved function will be done to our local government units. So if you've been hearing me talking about civil society and non-government organizations earlier, the Executive Order 138 has actually spelled out the role of the civil society. Kasi kailangan po natin talaga sila as partners. So those of you who are engaged in the NGOs or CSOs or people's organization this early, I really would encourage you to be active, very much active in the implementation of Executive Order 138. So we do recognize, we recognize the role of these organizations as active partners in the pursuit of local autonomy, particularly in, first, ito yung importante, providing feedback on the implementation of the programs and activities and projects of the government. And second would be to push for various advocacies and initiatives. They are really very good at this, for the pushing of advocacies. And taking part in the formulation of the plans, policies, and even the issuances or legislations in the government. And third would be implementing capacity development programs and other activities. So kasama natin sila doon sa pagbibigay ng mga training sa ating local government units. So these organizations are encouraged to participate in the preparation, implementation, and monitoring of the devolution transition plans as well. I know they are very active at that right now. And when we talk about the CSOs, we're not just limited to registered or accredited CSOs by the respective NGAs or to the members of the local special bodies in the respective LGUs. So, hindi lang po yung mga nakaregister sa SEC or nakaregister sa CDA or acknowledge ng ating or registered with the SWD or with the DILG ang po pwede pong sumali dito pag sila ay merong isang organisasyon na nabuo. Okay, as long as they would express their intent in participating and helping out in the implementation of EO 138, then they will be recognized by the government or by the local government unit. Okay, so this ends my slide in presenting to you the RDP and the EO 138. So as I said earlier, I would not be discussing directly what would be the implementation on the devolution of this, the implication on of the devolution of the services, but I hope that you have taken or you have had a grasp of the framework by which all this devolution of services will take place. So again, good morning to everyone, and thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Ma'am Agnes, for further elaborating what full devolution is in the perspective of NEDA. And I think what I got from the presentation was, especially for the strategic goals of the country, especially the Philippines, the importance of having established the targets and aligning the strategies, such as building accountability among the local government units, is very essential for us in the achievement of the strategic goal of the country. And the salient features, you talk about the salient features of EO 138, such as the importance of the delineation of the roles of the national government as well as the local government units, how we're looking at the preparation of the transition plans, as well as the importance of the capacity building for the local government units. I think that's very important considering the massive scope of the full devolution. And you emphasize further the importance of the need for the development of monitoring system. That's very important considering the change in the role of the local government, and hence we need to ensure that they are actually following a monitoring system that is established across the country, and everyone is using it for that particular purpose. So again, thank you, Ma'am Agnes. We'll be going back to Ma'am Agnes later on during the open forum. But for now, allow me to introduce our second speaker. Our second speaker is currently the Provincial Director of the Department of Interior and Local Government, Camarines Sur, with CESO 5 rank. She entered government service in her early 30s and was previously the Chief of the Local Government Monitoring and Evaluation Division of the DILG Regional Office 5. She was also the Dynamic Cluster Head and Program Manager of DILG Camarines Norte. Prior to her employment at DILG, she worked for 11 years in Camarines Norte Electric Cooperative Incorporated. She graduated in 1984 as cum laude in her Bachelor of Science in Tourism degree from the University of Santo Tomas, Manila. In 2004, she finished her Master in Public Administration and received the award Meritissimus in Ora Valida. She was able to finish her Bachelor of Laws in Camarines School of Law in 2009. And in 2019, she completed the course Public Management Development Program Modules Senior Executives Class Shuttle course implemented by the Development Academy of the Philippines and graduated with honors. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Melody E. Relucio, the Provincial Director of DILG Camarines Sur.
Good morning, everyone. So I will be sharing my screen. Thank you, RD Agnes. Marami po ang mawawala sa slides ko na discuss na ni Ma'am Agnes. I will be concentrating more on the devolution transition plans of the LGUs. Share screen niya. So, sana ako slideshow. Sandali lang po. Paano nang sunod yung gagawin?
Nakikita? Ano ko nakikita?
Nakashare na po ako.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So, nakaslide na po.
You just have to share your screen, I guess. I mean, you have to full presentation.
Slideshow lang.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay. Anyway, so I will be deleting some of the slides later. So I will not be repeating what has already been discussed by RD Agnes. So first and foremost, good morning, everyone. First, I would like to thank also the Ateneo Graduate School and the Center for Local Governance for giving me this opportunity to present to you and to share with you some of the preparations done by the local government units, particularly in Camarines Sur, in accepting and assuming the full devolution of functions and services related to as a result of the Mandanas ruling. So I will be skipping this already because we already know that the full devolution came about because of the Supreme Court decision with finality on July 3, 2018. This was a petition filed by two congressmen, Congressman Mandanas and Congressman Garcia. It happened during the term of the former President Benigno Aquino. So the question there was the computation of the national government by the computation of the internal revenue allotment to the local government units by the national government. So they also demanded for the payment of the unpaid era, which was around 500 billion from 1992 to 2012. With finality, the Supreme Court decided that true enough, the internal revenue allotment previously received by the local government units should also include the collections done by the Bureau of Customs and other agencies. So, ang sabi doon, all national taxes na ang included sa just share ng local government units. But given the limitations of the funds available, the Supreme Court also dismissed the claim for the LGU for the share not paid to them from 1992 to 2012. And the Supreme Court decision, we have a prospective application, and it will start this coming year, 2022. So from the internal revenue allotment, the share now of the local government units will be called national tax allotment. So, ano na ngayon ang picture ng sharing ng resources from the national government to the local government units. The Mandanas ruling, nag-change talaga yung landscape from the LGU to the NGAs because as mentioned earlier, one fund source lang naman ang buong bureaucracy of the government. So given the Mandanas ruling, the result is the local government units will have a bigger share in the funds collected and smaller budget for projects to be implemented by the national government agencies. Given this, the decision also, as discussed earlier, is in line with the declared policy of the state on decentralization, and it promoted the principle of subsidiarity as enshrined in the local government code or as promoted in the local government code. Those services which directly benefits the local population will have to be implemented by the local governments. But those that have higher impact, more with spillover effects on the other areas, this has to be given more to the higher levels of government. Also, as previously mentioned, the Supreme Court ruling implementation would require alignment really from all levels of government so that the priorities will be harmonized and there will be more effective complementation of programs, projects, and activities when it comes to implementation by both the local governments and the national governments. So given the change in the landscape, it would require really preparation from both the national government agencies and the local government units. That is why it is necessary that an executive order be issued so that there will be more smooth transitioning on the roles that will be adopted by the LGUs as far as the devolved functions will be given by the national agencies. So expected, magkakaroon talaga ng behavioral change in the stakeholders. First and foremost, given the new role, the national governments can concentrate more on the setting of standards and in developing the capacities of the local government. Again, this is in line with the object of decentralization. Given that those direct services will be given to the local governments, the public can expect a better service from their LGUs. And because they have direct access to the LGUs and there are direct consultations being done at the local level, it is expected that the programs, projects, and activities of the LGUs will be more responsive and in accordance to the standards set and continuously being given by the LGUs to their constituents. Now, given the levels of local governance, levels of local governments, the provincial government now is given a much bigger role, differentiated role ang ginamit na term dito in service delivery. Kasi as we all know, the local governments always serve as the general purpose government in local governance. So with this mandamus ruling and full devolution, it is expected na mas malakas ngayon ang oversight function to be done by the higher local government units. So ang convergence ng efforts dapat mangyari sa provincial government in support to the municipal and barangay governance. So as earlier mentioned also by RD Agnes, the devolution will pave more avenues for civil society organization, non-government organization, people's organization to be more engaged directly in the administration and in the implementation of the programs, projects, and activities at the local level, which will promote a more transparent, accountable, and responsive governance. So expectedly, the local special bodies already organized at the local level will entail more active participation from its civil society members. Kasi given the bigger resources with the LGUs, more programs, projects, and activities are expected. So the role of the CSOs will have to be highlighted also to ensure also the proper monitoring and evaluation of the programs, projects, and activities to be conducted. So let us go now to the fiscal impact of the Supreme Court ruling as far as the LGUs are concerned. So expected put prior to the issuance of the budget circular, an increase of at least 27.62% expected yan na itataas sa internal revenue allotment. Positive ito sa local government units, pero negative ito sa available disposable cash ng mga national government agencies. Ito, base lang ito dun sa computation ng DOF, itong slide presentation na to. So, ina-expect nila na talagang tataas. Pero, itong era allocation na to per LGU, alam naman po natin na mayroong sa 40% share, sa just share ng local government units sa total national collection ng national government, may allocation siya, percentages ng sharing. Ang share dyan ng provinces ay 23%, the same with cities, 34% for municipalities, and 20% sa mga barangays. So, because bigger ang pie ngayon sa era allocation per LGU for 2022 na magiging NTA na, ina-expect po natin na talagang pag kinompare natin yung 2020 and 2022, may expected increase siya ng 40%. Pero ang implication, again, ng Supreme Court ruling na yan, more resources for LGU service delivery. So expected na yung increase na yan sa ERA will help fund devolved basic services. Ang expectation, again, is better performance na responsive to the needs in accordance to standard and continuous ito. Pero fewer resources na ito for the national government agencies, lalong-lalo na yung mga i-devolve na functions. So, ang NGAs ngayon magko-concentrate na sa oversight function nila at pag-set ng standard at pag-develop ng capacity ng local governments. Given these two effects, magkakaroon ito ng greater demand for capacity building and supervision sa LGUs. So, nakalagay naman po ito doon sa guiding principle natin na continuous ang ipoprovide ng capacity building initiatives ng national government sa ating mga local government units. Pero this is also a way of, again, strengthening the oversight responsibilities of the provinces over the municipalities and the exercise also of the oversight function of the municipalities over their respective local barangays. Okay? So, ito po, Executive Order 138, na-discuss na po ito ni RD Agnes. So, nagkaroon na din po ito ng implementing rules and regulation na na-incorporate na po ni RD Agnes sa kanyang discussion noong July 2, 2021. So, ito po, skip ko na po siya. Okay. Pero, mag-concentrate po ako ngayon sa devolved basic services and facilities as enumerated in the Local Government Code of 1991, particularly Section 17. Ito pong mga basic services and facilities na ito enumerated na, and it is expected that the LGUs will be able to assume the responsibilities of these devolved services. To fully understand how the devolved services are distributed to all the levels of local government units, ito po yung nakalagay sa Section 17, enumeration na, and naka-check na po dyan kung alin dyan sa mga devolved services na yan ang may responsibility ang bawat level of the LGUs. So kung mapapansin po natin, halos lahat ng extension ng functions and services may inassume na responsibility ang province except po doon sa investment and job placement information system and yung transportation services kasi devolved po siya sa mga municipalities and cities. If you will also notice, almost all of the devolved basic services and facilities meron ang municipality except sa housing services na devolved naman po siya sa provinces and cities. It is also worth mentioning that cities, special category po siya, lahat meron siya kasi the cities are expected to perform the responsibilities and the authorities na given sa provinces and municipalities. Dahil lowest naman sa level of local government units ang barangay, they are only given 5 devolved services. And these are certain functions under the agricultural extension and on-site research services, sa local infra services, environmental services, health services, and social welfare services. At the end of my presentation, flinash ko na rin po na i-share ko na din po sa inyo yung devolved services na to specifically for each level of local government units as attachment to EO 138 IRR and also sa DBM circular. So in support to the decision of the Supreme Court, naglabas na din po ang Department of Budget and Management ng Local Budget Memorandum na naka-specify na po yung indicative national tax allotment for fiscal year 2022 sa mga local government units. Dito din po sa DBM memorandum na to, inilagay na po yung guidelines on the preparation of fiscal year 2022 annual budget ng local government units. So, nilabas po ito nila noong June 14, 2021. So, i-share ko po sa inyo ang ilan sa mga salient features ng local budget memo ito. So, first, dito sa local memo number 82, nilagay na po dyan kung how much will be the total NTA share of LGUs. Nag-amount po siya sa 959,041,250,000. So, taken na po siya hindi lamang from the collection of the Bureau of Internal Revenue, kundi kasama na din po yung collection of the Bureau of Customs and other agencies as certified by the Bureau of Treasury. So if we will be comparing the level of the share of the local government units with that of their share for 2021, mayroon po siyang 37.89% increase sa share. So malaki po talaga ang share ngayon for 2022. And ito po nilagay na dito kung magkano yung share ng mga provinces, cities, and municipalities. So, i-share ko na din po sa inyo yung nakalagay sa Annex A. Expected po natin based on Local Budget Memo number 82 na ang Region 5, meron po siyang 58 billion, 547,996,787 total share sa NTA. Yan po ay for the entire Region 5 LGUs. Pero nagkaroon po ng Local Budget Memorandum number 82-A noong August 19, 2021. Nagkaroon ng konting changes doon sa share, indicative share ng mga regions because of the population basis. Previously po, doon sa 82, ang binasehan niya is 2015 Census of Population. So with the recent Presidential Proclamation number 1179, ang ginamit na po yung 2020 Census of Population. So alam naman po natin na ang just share ay ang distribution po natin ng era previously at ngayon ay NTA. Ang basis po niyan ay land area and population. So ngayon po, dahil may changes dun sa population, ang naging share na lang ng Region 5 sa NTA from 58 billion naging 57 billion plus na lang po. Pero still, malaki pa rin po ang increase nito sa mga local government units. So, nakapaloob din po doon sa Budget Memo 82 as required under Executive Order 138, ang lahat ng local government units required to prepare their own LGU Devolution Transition Plan. This has to be done in close coordination with the NGAs concerned based pa din po sa guidelines to be issued ng DILG and DBM. Nakapag-issue na po ang DILG ng JMC, DBM and DILG ng JMC number 1. So naka-enumerate na po doon kung paano gagawin yung LGU Devolution Transition Plan. Ito po din ngayon ang gagamitin na basis, yung DTP ng bawat LGU, yun ang gagamiting basis ng ating mga concerned national agencies in their exercise of their oversight function. Kakabit na LGU Devolution Transition Plan ay ang formulation pa din po ng LGU ng kanilang Capacity Development Agenda. It is very important that they have their own capacity development agenda because this will serve as their guide and this will be the basis for the interventions needed by the LGUs to carry out yung goals and trusts and objectives as indicated in their DTPs and as well as in the performance of their duties and functions as embodied in their comprehensive development plan. So given that there will be a shift from the national government agencies implementing some devolved functions to the local government units, it is also necessary that the LGUs come up with their own communication plans and strategies to inform the public on the delineation of the functions and services between the NGAs and the LGU. So dahil meron din pong created na communication strategy under EOT 138, so it has to be aligned, yung communication plan ng LGUs, aligned din po dun sa communication plan na formulated and approved by the Commission on Devolution. So it is also worth mentioning that the funding requirements for the preparation of all these three important plans are included and should be prioritized by the LGUs in their annual investment plan and in their annual budget. So, another, provided in the budget memorandum are several reminders in the use of the additional share received by the LGUs. First of which, the national tax allotment and other local sources shall first cover the cost of providing the services and facilities enumerated under Section 17 of the Local Government Code. Ito na nga po yung present ko earlier. And based din po sa EO 138, yung functions, services, and facilities na fully devolve from the national government to the local government, i-assume po ito fully until 2024. So given naman po ang LGUs ng 3 years to fully assume these functions. And hindi na po madadagdagan yon. Kasi kung ano po yung indicated sa Section 17, yun po ang full devolved functions na i-assume ng local government units. And there will be no additional transferring or assumption of personnel from the NGAs. As previously explained, may options naman pong provided sa mga affected personnel ng national government agencies na magde-devolve. So it is not expected on the part of the LGU to absorb or to hire those NGAs personnel opting to apply for consideration or employment at the local level, na lalo na if they will be the ones performing the devolved functions previously in their own mother units. So unlike yung previous devolution in 1991 na kasama na dinevolve yung personnel ng DOH, ng DSWD, and the Department of Agriculture, in this full devolution, wala pong personnel transfer from the NGAs to the LGUs. So given this big responsibility, it is necessary now for the LGUs to be more focused on the responsibilities given them, to be able to perform their functions and responsibilities better. They should be more strategic in their planning. And to be strategic, they should be guided by the mandates given them. And for this full devolution, they shall be guided by those enumerated under Section 17 of the Local Government Code. So, lumabas na rin po, as I earlier mentioned, ang DBM and DILG nung guidelines on the preparation of the devolution transition plan of the LGUs in support of the full devolution. This was approved on August 11, 2021. And with this, sinabi po doon sa JMC na ang local governments ang primarily responsible in providing the direct service delivery to their constituents. And they will assume greater responsibility and accountability in ensuring the quality of the devolved services given them. And with this, they are expected to strengthen their capacity to exercise the stewardship of their increased fiscal resources. That is why it is very important that they update their capacity development agenda. And with that, they have to work hard in enhancing their organizational capability in providing for the services required from their end. And it goes without saying that given the bigger resources, they have to institute a more transparent, accountable, and participatory mechanism in their own areas of responsibility to better achieve the national and local development objectives provided for in the laws. So, ang guiding principle, another guiding principle pa din po, kailangan ang local governments po mag-establish talaga ng robust partnership with the NGAs, the private sector, the NGOs, CSOs, and POs, including academic institutions like Ateneo, the NAGA University, service providers po. And they can be tapped for their technical expertise so that the LGUs will be better informed and can innovate and provide better services to their constituents. So ano ang mga components po ng local government, ay yung devolution transition plan? Ibigay ko na lang po ang summary nito. So ito po yung components ng local government units devolution transition plan. Isang libro po ito, narrative with tables, na so far nasa 89% na po ang compliance ng ating mga local government units sa Camsur. Meron na lang ata 5 LGUs na hindi pa nakakatapos, municipal level and city level, na hindi pa nakakatapos ng kanilang devolution transition plan. Nasa ongoing phase pa din po. Pero sa barangays po, nasa 98% na ng ating mga barangays, nakakomplete na po sila ng kanilang LGU devolution transition plan. So ano ba ang nasa loob ng LGU devolution transition plan? Ang first chapter po niyan ay ang inventory nila ng devolved functions and services. Dito sa first chapter, nakalagay po dyan yung baseline information ng status ng kanilang devolved functions and services and facilities. Dito, tinitingnan na po alin yung na-implement na nila, alin ang i-implement nila, at alin ang for 2020 ay available din po ang mga resources na meron sila. So dito, tinitingnan po natin kung asa na sa devolution, sa assumption ng devolved functions and services, ang local government unit. Second chapter po niyan, given the current state of the devolved function, making use of it as the baseline information, titingnan na po ngayon ng local government unit yung full assumption. As previously mentioned, ang mga LGUs po, given sila ng 3 years to fully assume yung devolved functions and services. So, i-consider po nila yung current state nila, yung available resources. So, mag-facing out sila ngayon ng devolved functions. Ang bawat office, titingnan nila ngayon, alin ang pwede na for 2022, alin ang pwede na for 2023, and alin ang pwede hanggang 2024. They are guided also by the proposed NGA Devolution Transition Plan. Kaya po, importante yung alignment na yon and timing of the implementation. What is good with the transitioning phase, ang mga national government agencies po have already talked and discussed the proposed DTPs naman po ng mga NGAs para nakaplan out ng mabuti ang LGU sa facing ng assumptions nito. Ang DSWD, nakikipag-coordinate po sila sa MSWDO, sa CSWDO, sa PSWDO, at dinidiscuss nila ngayon yung proposed phasing out ng devolved function. The same with DOH, Department of Health, and the Department of Agriculture. So, pagka nag-workshop na po ngayon yung mga LGUs in determining kung alin ang i-phase out nila for, ang i-assume nila for the next 3 years, naka-anchor na din po yan sa phasing na gagawin ng concerned national government agencies. Kung natapos po nila yan, ang titingnan na nila ay ang capability of the LGU. Kaya papasok po sila doon sa capacity development agenda, formulation, and its requirement. Kasi one of the challenges faced by LGUs, most of our LGUs, meron lang po sa isang department, one department head and one staff. Given yung additional devolved functions, baka hindi talaga kayanin ng LGU yung i-devolve na function. So kailangan talaga po tingnan nila yung capacity, both capability and the carrying capacity of the organization, both of the personnel and the organization itself. So sabi nga po namin, pagdating sa capacity development agenda formulation, nagbibigay po ang DILG ng technical assistance in coming up with this para po well-guided po ang ating mga LGUs. Isa sa mga problema din po na i-encounter ng ating mga LGUs sa capacity development agenda ay it will have direct effect doon sa current organizational structure and staffing pattern ng LGUs. As I earlier mentioned po, minsan ang may mga LGUs na 1 or 2 personnel lang in each department, given po na malaki na ngayon yung responsibility nila, kailangan nila ng additional personnel. So pag nangailangan ng additional personnel, magkakaroon ng changes or structure and staffing pattern. So meron pa itong challenges kasi meron pong ino-observe ang LGU na ceiling when it comes to personal services, 45 and 55% ceiling. LGUs ng first to third class municipalities, ang ceiling po nila is 45%. Yung fourth to sixth class municipality, 55%. And they cannot go above that ceiling kasi mahuubos na ang pondo nila yon sa pondong available ng LGU para lang sa ipabayad sa sweldo ng ating mga personnel. So, ito po palang first 3 chapter, makikita po natin ito sa Devolution Transition Plan ng mga barangays. Itong organizational structure hanggang doon po sa performance target. Ito po ay makikita natin sa Devolution Transition Plan ng municipalities, cities, and provinces. Wala na po niyan ang barangay. Hanggang lang sa capacity development agenda requirements ang makikita natin sa devolution transition plan ng barangay. Kasi very simple naman po ang organizational structure and staffing pattern ng barangay. Talagang hindi sila pwede pang mag-create pa ng mas extensive na structure kasi may mga limitations po ang ating mga barangays lalo na sa atin. Hanggang ngayon nga po, honorarium basis pa din sila. Hindi pa sila nakaka-afford sa current resources nila na magkaroon ng salary. Unlike sa mga highly urbanized cities like sa Metro Manila, sa Cebu, salaried na po ang ating mga barangay officials. Pero sa atin po, hindi pa. So, ganun lang po kasimple ang sa barangay na devolution transition plan. So, let's go back to the organizational structure and staffing pattern based kang devolution transition plan. So, dito, other than the PSC link, kailangan din po ang LGU, i-observe pa din po yung LBM LBC number 61 na nagpo-provide po sa mga position titles and their corresponding salary grade. Dapat in accordance din po sila sa civil service rules and regulation and other laws pertaining to structures and staff. Sa local revenue forecast and resource mobilization strategy, dito po makikita natin sa chapter na to yung plan ng LGU to ensure that all the devolved functions and services previously and in additional devolved services ma-continuous ang implementation. So they have to be ensured of the revenue to be generated comes 2022 onwards. Sabi po, kaya di ba, pag mayong pundo, pumundo. So, most important part of the devolution transition plan is ensuring na well-funded hanggang sa 2024 onwards pa ang mga programs, projects, and activities na i-assume ng LGU. May ano na po ito, may kulatilya na sa LBC number 82 na maaaring ang NTA by 2023 and 2024 not as high as received for 2022 because of the pandemic and economic problems encountered by the country during 2020 and this year's limitations brought about by the pandemic. And another to be ensured about are the performance target for the devolved functions and services to ensure the continuity. And in this aspect, the oversight function and the standards set by the national government agencies will come into play. So yung last chapter po dyan, ito ang babasehan din ng national government agencies in monitoring and evaluating the performance of our LGUs. Okay. So, ito na po yung sabi ko earlier na nandun na din po sa LBM number 82 yung probability of the lower revenue collection of the government in 2020. Kasi alam naman po natin ang NTA or previously yung ERA, yung 2 years back ang basis ng share ng local government units. So, ngayon po, ang binasehan natin ay yung 2019 collection, so mataas. So, for 2023, ang magiging revenue collection basis ng share ay yung collection ng 2020. Nandun po yung ating imposition ng mga quarantines and restrictions, so maaari pong mababa ang i-record na collection ng national government. So, it follows na county din po ang magiging share ng mga LGUs. So, sa timeline ng submission, ano na po yan, lampas na yung ating mga barangay and municipalities. So, sa December 12, inaasahan po natin makakasubmit na din ang mga provinces kasi 120 calendar days na po yun after the issuance of the JMC by the DILG and the DBM. So again, sabi ko po, for the province of Camarines Sur, 98% na po ang compliance ng ating mga barangay, pero meron pa po tayong 6 municipalities na andun pa rin po sila sa ongoing stage. So, nasa completion, pa rin po sila ng kanilang DPT. Pero submitted naman po ito. Dapat sa ating portal, mayroon pong portal na madali ang access and sharing ng mga NGAs para po mas mabilis ang submission and studying gagawin ng ating mga concerned NGAs sa pag-formulate ng policies and standards on the devolved functions sa ating mga LGUs. So ito po yung mga agencies with devolved services. As earlier mentioned po, ang NEDA, wala po siyang devolved services, pero dahil ang in-exercise po ay ang devolved function, pero na-mention po ang NEDA dahil yung pong attached agency, yung Commission on Population and Development, may devolved services po na pwedeng ma-tap ng mga provinces na may obligation on the population programs and services. So, ayan po yung mga enumeration, marami. So, ito naman po, ito po yung devolved services and yung inaasahan natin na i-assume ng ating mga local government units. Kung mapapansin nyo po dyan, halimbawa, itong Department of Agriculture, ang devolved functions po niya ay agricultural services. So, ang provinces, ito pong enumeration na ito ng mga PPAs, ang expected na i-assume niya from 2022 fully hanggang 2024. There are already several services here na inassume na po ng mga provinces. Pero meron pa rin po na i-devolve yung ating Department of Agriculture, and yun po yung nakapaloob sa kanilang Devolution Transition Plan. Kung mapapansin po natin, itong cities wala siyang laman kasi again, ang cities po, ina-assume niya both ang authority and responsibility of the provinces and municipalities. Pero ang barangay, may separate po talaga siyang mga devolved services. Hindi ko na po siya iisa-isahin, pero isi-share ko na lang po ito sa inyo para po for your reference. Pero makikita po natin dito, enumerated na po siya. Okay. Ito, nakapaloob lang sa Section 17 ng Republic Act 7160. And incidentally po, ang mga NTAs, ang mga Devolution Transition Plan ng mga NGAs, ang alam ko po, submitted na siya sa DBM kasi subject po siya for approval ng DBM. On the other hand, ang mga Devolution Transition Plan of the LGUs is to be submitted to their concerned sangguniang bayan or sangguniang panlunsod and sangguniang panlalawigan for their approval. And for incorporation din po sa kanilang annual budget for 2022 and the succeeding years. So ang sabi nga po natin, ulitin ko lang, pag mayong pondo, ay pumundo. So it is necessary po na all the devolved functions and services included sa annual budget ng ating mga local government units. Ang executive budget po ay na-submit na ng mga mayors and mga punong barangay sa kanilang sanggunian as early as October 6. So ngayon po, ongoing ang review ng mga annual budget nila sa kanilang kanya-kanyang mga sanggunian for submission sa review ng sangguniang panlalawigan. Also po included in the implementing rules and regulation ng Executive Order number 138 yung mga laws, devolution laws passed after the 1991 Local Government Code. Share ko na rin po sa inyo for your reference. Pero ito po, nag-create ito ng challenge sa mga LGUs ngayon. Kasi marami po dito sa mga devolution laws na pass, nagre-require ng creation ng office or creation ng position within the LGU. Hindi pa po lahat ng LGUs compliant dito sa mga positions required. Kasi nga po, may mga limitations ang ating mga LGUs. Hindi pa po wini-waive yung 45-55% ceiling on personal services. So, yan po. Okay, so thank you very much po. That ends my presentation for this morning.
Thank you, Ma'am Melody Relucio. Now, we fully understand how beneficial and crucial this executive order is, not only for those working in the local government units, but particularly on the community as well. So at this point, I would just like to highlight the importance on how it impacts the budget for the LGUs, and that there's an expected increase actually in the share of the LGU on this budget. And the importance here is to strengthen the capacity of the LGUs and have that partnership, as you mentioned earlier, between other stakeholders in order for the LGU to have the needed capacity in responding to the challenges of the full devolution. You also highlighted the importance of the DTPs and the expectation of such items from the local government units and the manner for which they are expected to submit. So we're looking forward to the implementation of the full devolution and how this will roll out in the coming years. So at this point, I would like to invite the reactors from the MPA and the MBA students taking up PA 204 and MBA 237 to share their insights and comments on the full devolution in the context of their future work as MBA and MPA graduates. So we've invited uh, our peers from these classes. The goal here is primarily to lay different perspective and how they see the full devolution affecting their future work as future professionals, both in the private and public organizations. So let's start with Miss Melissa Siglin Borromeo, a student from Master in Business Administration from the MBA 237 class. Ma'am Sig.
Thank you, Jake, Chris. May I share my slides? Good morning, RD Agnes and PD Melody. Thank you for your exhaustive presentations. And also Dr. Malu, our professor, thank you very much for this opportunity to learn more about significant recent developments in our government, in the mandates of our government. In the early 2000s, when I was in the Great Women Project, or the Gender Responsive Economic Actions for the Transformation of Women, I got to interface with organized entrepreneurial women groups in various Metro NAGA towns and with their partner government agencies or the national government agencies, NGAs. I can distinctly remember the MAO, the Municipal Agriculture Officer of Gainsa. She was in a quandary as to how they would be able to implement the BFAR and DA project of Pangasius when it was not appropriate for the community because Talangka was their OTOP, or the one town, one product, and the major source of livelihood in the community. She said that the funds downloaded to the LGU would have been used more effectively if this were for the sustainability of the Talangka sanctuaries in the Bicol River. That to ensure the continuous harvest of our fisher folks. She had a point there, right? Therefore, the decentralization where projects are not coming from the central office and the LGU has a say on what is more important and has impact in their localities is really very important. Article 10, Section 3 of the 1987 Philippine Constitution mentions decentralization, and the IRR of devolution to implement this section of the Constitution indicates two aims or goals. So may I share my takeaways on these aims for our 1987 constitutions. First, on the capability development of local government units. The devolution will strengthen the LGU's response, as these are for the public services and facilities, as we've heard from our presenters. The LGU's response will be strengthened to the actual needs of their constituents, and with their supervision over the devolved function, better results may be achieved. I think this is the response to the Gainsa story I mentioned earlier. In the case of local economic growth, they can provide policies and enabling mechanisms for better responsiveness, especially in the full implementation of the ease of doing business. The 2021 Global Entrepreneurship Monitor, or GEM report, shared that in low and middle income countries, 52% of the women view entrepreneurship as the path to a better future. And this despite the cultural and structural barriers which obstruct growth opportunities. To enable this growth, LGUs can install mechanisms to assist budding women entrepreneurs. The Great Women Project has concrete examples of these enabling mechanisms, like providing common service facilities with a daycare area, which took into account the need for childcare during work hours. Wala nang iisipin yung mga nanay na naghahanap buhay kasi may daycare na para sa kanila. The NGAs, on the other hand, would be able to focus on more strategic policies and programs towards national development. Again, on our guidance example, rather than bringing down nationally crafted plans to clueless areas, DA can go into strategic programs to make our locally produced goods competitive than imported ones. Second, my second takeaway on upholding good governance, in the institutionalizing systems like the Gender and Development Budget, this may be prescribed to streamline performance monitors and assessment parameters, thereby promoting transparency and accountability. Lalo na po meron na tayo nung Mandanas ruling where more funds will be downloaded to the LGUs. With more accessibility to services, the constituents are able to derive benefit from the contributions they have dutifully complied with as taxpayers. And third, there will be more participation of constituents in legislation, decision-making, even problem-solving, and of course, in the planning and budgeting for proper alignment of the activities. Bureaucratic processes are abolished when the leaders in the localities themselves are able to consult with their communities. This also provides venues for participation in arriving at decisions on areas that have impact on their lives. The different local bodies like the school board or the local economic council or the CESO, the NGOs, can share inputs to the LGU officials for strategic planning or policy development. I know that this is being done in Naga City, but with a focus on the full decentralization, more LGU should be able to do this. For the effect on businesses, I can name a number of these effects, but the following, which I will share, are the most mentioned from my consultations with fellow members of the Metro NAGA Council, Metro NAGA Chamber of Commerce and Industry, MNCCI. With the local government code and other relevant laws and the effectivity of the Mandanas ruling, funds from the national government or the GEF may be allotted for business as subsidies, especially in the light of recovery from the pandemic. Because of COVID-19, the Philippines experienced in 2020 one of the deepest GDP contractions in the ASEAN. Napakababa ng ating GDP in 2020. And in the ADB survey of around 14,000 businesses, 37% closed shop in 2020, and out of these, 7% permanently closed. There are many government restrictions which directly affected the businesses, the lockdowns, curfew, and structural renovations to allow ventilation. And because ventilation is one of DOLE's list of requirements upon reopening of the workplaces, this really is a dent on the finances of the businesses. In our company alone, BIGS, following health protocols strictly means that in the production line, for example, our shifts are added to consider the small number of people for physical distancing. So this additional shift entails longer total work hours, thus higher utility bills, and therefore, these compliant companies may be the LGU could have granted subsidies for power or water bills. That's just one of the areas um, which I can share with you as a concrete example based on our experience. Government subsidies also could have helped micro enterprises not to close down, especially those women-led, like providing assistance on family care or health services, so they will not be taken away from work to attend to domestic concerns. In the same GEM report, 1 in 3 enterprises is owned by a woman. And this is important to note because 90 to 95% of a woman's income is shared with the household for basic needs like food, education, clothing. So the more sustainable women's enterprises are, the more families lead comfortable lives. Another effect is on public-private partnerships. There are already very good non-infra examples which you can refer to from the OVP's model, from the Office of the Vice President's model. Those which really benefit the marginalized, like housing, transport, and health services. Clearly, these are devolved functions to the LGUs. Noteworthy too, in NAGA City is the Tarabangan contra COVID-19, where the private sector initiated to help the LGU set up systems to minimize cases. The swab cab has now been institutionalized, is now part of the isolation process. With more funds, indeed the LGU will be more than capable to promote partnership. And lastly, capacity development or enabling mechanisms, especially for microenterprises. Delegated functions to the LGU, not only for basic services and facilities, but also for economic growth, would give them the opportunity to be trained to facilitate delivery with better understanding on local economic growth. Enabling mechanisms will be made possible. An example of this mechanism is networking with social enterprises to body up with micro enterprises, develop their products, and find suitable market for them. There are other enabling mechanisms in our wish list, from startup to incentives to investments. All these need capacitated LGU personnel to pass policies, to allot funds for these wishes to come true. As I close, let me share with you Spider-Man's principle. With greater power comes great responsibility. Therefore, with more money and more functions for the LGUs, this means more power. Thus, it is now in their hands, this great responsibility to uphold one of decentralization's thrust, good governance. And together as an empowered community, we can pursue ambition natin 2040. Thank you.
Thank you, Ma'am Sig, for providing your key takeaways and insights on EO 138 and the full devolution. At this point, I would like to invite our second reactor from the MBA 237 class, Mr. Mendelssohn Mariano.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, Sir Jacobs, for that introduction. Thank you again, Ma'am Agnes and Ma'am Melody, for those comprehensive walkthroughs of the Executive Order 138. Okay. Okay. For my reaction, I just wanted to give you just one slide. Personally, for me, I'm a visual learner, so I wanted to go to understand the executive order as simple as possible, in a way that it can be understood in just one photo. Okay. So I found this photo on what equality versus equity is, and I thought that it was very apt for the Executive Order number 138. First off, on the side of equality, if you may see in the you may observe that the left part of those buildings are cracked and very sparsely separated from each other, whereas from the right side, it's a whole city. They're linked by an underground tunnel that one pool of community resources is feeding into. Although there's equality there that both the left and right cities are receiving those community resources. In the case of Executive Order number 138, it's taxes or the government equity fund. In the right side now, when we're implementing Executive Order number 138, each of the buildings on the left side has now their own pipeline to the community resources. Each of the buildings has an equity level of or the resource that they need in order to function properly, which is basically in essence the Executive Order number 138. So just to put it more, just to put a snippet from the Executive Order, it was made to cover for the basic services and facilities when the local government units are unable to provide or are inadequate in their operations. So connecting it to my personal experiences under a private entity, I see that this Executive Order number 138 is in actuality a business process re-engineering activity. It's not just a performance review or an evaluation of how they're doing, if they're doing well or not. But more than that, it's assessing the entire process, the entire system to see what could be made better, what's the inadequacies that they will be able to cover by revising the entire process. So as part of business process reengineering or 5 steps, first off is identifying the problem. Second is analyzing and research the current situation. Third is designing the or the future state of what you want to achieve. And fourth is the actual implementation of those proposals. And lastly, the evaluation part of the entire process to see what more could they be better. It's the Executive Order number 138 is not just a one-time thing. It's in actuality, it's a cycle that for each fiscal year, each annual year, each 3 years, we assess the performance of the entire government system from the national down to the local. In this case, the focus more is on the local. Okay, so as part of the devaluation transition plan, it's really just analyzing the current process and seeing what could be done better, especially in the terms of budget and taxes that are being provided to them. Since one of the root causes that they advised was an inadequate supply of resources, both financially and capacity-wise. Okay. Just aside from that, as part of since both private entities, private sector, and the government have in common is that they are in an organization. From an organization, you really have that pyramid level, pyramid-looking system wherein at the very top you have the decision makers, and at the very bottom you have the people that really make sure that everything is working on a day-to-day basis. That's their output. From what Ma'am Agnes shared earlier, their regional development plan is coming from a national level, and from Ma'am Melodies, from the regional down to the local. So you see that pyramid organizational chart present as well, though that pyramid is also under review from Executive Order number 138, not just from a top down, but also from a bottom up and from side to side. So each and every department, organization in the government has to work closely hand in hand in order to make sure that their activities are successful and that they contribute to the 2040 Ambition Natin goals. Okay. Right. So one more thing that I wanted to add, Ma'am Agnes did mention that 2022 is the national elections year. And I wanted to go through the implication of that from the impact of a national level leadership down to the barangay level leadership. Since, again, we're voting not just for the president, vice president, and secretary, and a House of Representatives and such, but we're also asked to vote down to the barangay level. So I wanted to put into that implication that since the government elections happen similarly on a cycle basis, well, it acknowledges that there are shortcomings in the past and present government bodies, but also it's an opportunity not just for the government but for each and every one of us Filipinos to do better. It's an acknowledgement that we can put the people who are better suited for the job to lead these kinds of projects and activities to better serve the Filipino community. Again, not to repeat the past mistakes. It's an opportunity to not just improve the services, but to improve the overall system. Going from a very centralized system, as shown in the equality side, to a more independent regional and LGU level to the equity side. And again, that boils down to a national going down to the regional, and again to the bottommost level of LGUs up to the barangay levels on the decentralization activities. So again, the Executive Order number 138, the ambition natin 2040 goals are just part of that cycle of continuous improvement. Something businesses have, something successful businesses has to do, something the government has to do, and something that each and every single one of us has to do as well. Right. So again, it's all about getting the right people and the right people under the head, as well as the right people to follow through on everything. Okay. And with that, actually, I just wanted to, as cliche as it sounds, I really like the quote from Gandhi that you need to be the change that you want to see in the world. And again, as by Ma'am Agnes and Ma'am Melody, it also needs our active participation as critics and supporters of the government. Okay. That would be it for my reaction. Thank you.
Thank you, Mandelson, for that great takeaways that you have and for sharing it with the class, and for our streamers as well over the YouTube channel and our Facebook page. At this point, I would like to invite now the reactors from PA 204, starting with Mr. Rex Resuena for his reaction as well.
Good morning. First and foremost, we would like to give our heartfelt thanks to our speakers, the Regional Director Agnes Tolentino of NEDA, as well as our Provincial Director of the DILG, PD Melody Relucio, and as and by way of the action to our full devolution of local government units and its implication to these services, I deem it wise to present to you a small, short presentation, slide presentation on what is this Mandanas ruling. As a matter of fact, a lot of people are asking, what is this Mandanas? Some of them are thinking, considering that Mandanas and Manzanas are of the same sound, so they thought that Mandanas ruling is something to eat. But at any rate, there's some truth to that, because this Mandanas ruling will bring a lot of projects that will cause people put food on their table. So allow me to present these slides, and mind you, these words here are not mine. I culled it from the two consolidated en banc decision of the Supreme Court filed by Congressman Governor Emiliano Mandanas and his other colleagues versus Executive Secretary Paquito Ochoa, also in his colleagues in the executive department, as well as the petition also filed by Governor and Congressman Enrique Garcia et al. Versus the same respondents. And Congressman Garcia later on also included in his petition a petition for mandamus. So the Mandanas ruling or the Mandanas doctrine clarifies the share from the internal revenue allotment, or commonly known as IRA, of the local government units. It does not exclude other national taxes like custom duties. The exclusion of the other national taxes like custom duties from the base for determining the just share of the LGUs contravene the constitutional provision under Section 6, Article 10 of the 1987 Constitution. Accordingly, the national taxes to be included in the base for computing the just share of the local government units shall not be limited to the following. Letter A. The national internal revenue taxes enumerated in Section 21 of the NIRC collected by the Bureau of Internal Revenue and the Bureau of Customs. Under that Section 21, there are about from letter A to letter G, sources of internal revenue, which includes the income tax, estate and donors tax, value-added tax, other percentage taxes, excise taxes, documentary stamp taxes, and such other taxes as are or may hereafter be imposed and collected by the BIR. So under the before Mandanas ruling, these are the only basis of internal revenue taxes stated under Section 21 of the NIRC. However, there are other taxes that must be included in the computation, like letter B, tariff and custom duties collected by the Bureau of Customs. Letter C, 50% of the value-added tax collected in the Bangsang Moro Autonomous Region in Muslim Mindanao, and 30% of all other national taxes collected in the BARM. Then letter D, 60% of the national taxes collected from the exploitation and development of the national wealth. And letter E, 85% of the excise taxes collected from locally manufactured Virginia-type cigarettes and other tobacco products. And the entire 50% of the national taxes collected under Section 106, which refers to the value-added tax on sale of goods and or properties. Section 108, the VAT on the sale of services and use or lease of properties. And Section 116, tax on persons exempt from value-added tax of the National Internal Revenue Code as provided under Section 238, otherwise as the disposition of National Internal Revenue of the NRIC. And lastly, 5% of the 25% franchise taxes given to the national government under Section 6 of Republic Act 6631 and Section 8 of Republic Act 6632. So this should have been the other taxes included in the computation of the ERA. The first part that question or issue on the era which Governor Mandanas was assailing to be violative of the constitutional provision under section Article 6, Article 10, Section 6, which states that local government units shall have a just share as determined by law in the national taxes which shall be automatically released to them. At that time, before the petition of Governor Mandanas, only the definition of the national taxes was only limited to the era which is stated under Section 21 of the NRIC. Then thereafter, Governor Enriquez Garcia of Bataan filed another petition which now assails or which now petitions the Supreme Court that aside from Section 21, earlier mentioned, the following other national taxes should be included in the computation to be distributed to the local government units. So after that, it was a long process of answers, counter answers, etc., and etc., and even reached the point that the Office of the Solicitor General, standing for the Republic of the Philippines, filed a motion for reconsideration. But in all cases, when there is a start, when there is something to commence on, the time will come that a decision will be held. And therefore, the Supreme Court, consolidating those two cases, declared, number one, that the phrase internal revenue appearing in Section 284 of the Local Government Code is unconstitutional and deleted from the phrase of Section 284. As modified, it will now read as follows. Section 284, allotment of taxes. Local government units shall have a share in the national taxes, no longer internal revenue taxes, based on the collection of the third fiscal year preceding the current fiscal year as follows. The enumeration from A to B, A to C, are the formula by which the release of the national taxes will be had. Then the second salient point there is that the allocation to local government units, here are the percentaging, then followed by that the share of each province and city shall be determined on the basis of the following formula. In terms of population, in terms of land area, and in terms of equal sharing. Because we must understand that not all provinces have the same population. There are regions, there are provinces, particularly in Metro Manila, that are densely populated. And there are also provinces and LGUs with big land areas and other small areas. So there will be some disparities in that there was a provision for equal sharing and for 25%. And furthermore, it is stated there that the share of barangays with a population of not less than 100 inhabitants shall not less than 80,000 per annum, which shall be charged to the 20% share of the barangay from the allotment and the balance allocated on the basis of the following formula. There, the first year, the second year, and the third year. Again, it is based on population and equal sharing. And under the Section 287, local development projects, Each local government unit shall appropriate in its annual budget no less than 20% of its annual allotment for development projects. Copies of the development plans of the LGU shall be furnished to the DILG. And under Section 290, the amount of share of local government units shall, in addition to the allotment, have a share of 40% of the gross collection derived by the national government from the preceding fiscal year coming from mining, royalties, forestry, fisheries charges, and such other taxes, fees, or charges, including related surcharges, interest, or fines, and from its share in any co-production, joint venture, or production sharing agreement in the utilization and development of the national wealth within the territorial jurisdiction. Then Article 378, Article 379, Article 380, Article 382, Article 409, 461, and related provisions of the implementing rules and regulations of the local government code are hereby modified to reflect the deletion of the phrase internal revenue and be placed with national taxes. Henceforth, any mention of the internal revenue allotment or IRA in Republic Act 7160 and its implementing rules and regulations shall be understood as pertaining to the allotment to the local government units derived from the national taxes. Second, of the decision of the NBAC decisions of the twin Mandanas and Garcia cases, it orders the Secretary of the Department of Finance, Department of Budget and Management, the Commissioners of the Internal Revenue, and the Commissioner of Custom and the Natural Treasurer to include all collections of national taxes in the computation of the base of the just share of the local government units according to the ratio provided in the now modified Section 284 of Republic Act 7160, except those accruing to special purpose funds and special allotment. So, mahaba-haba po yan, but at any rate, that the gist of the decision of the Mandanas ruling empowers now the local government units and amended the ERA provisions in the local government code to be transferred or to be amended into a national tax allotment. So that is now, based on this decision, that is now the reason why we have Executive Order 138, the reason why the LGUs are now having their capability building seminars and now preparing their devolution transition plans. Both the NGAs, national government units, as well as the LGUs are doing everything in accordance with the ruling of the Mandanas Garcia case. That's all. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sir Rex, for providing us insights on how the Mandanas ruling actually paved forward to the development of the EO 138. And at this point, I would like just to inform everyone that we'll be extending for several minutes because we still have one reactor and we need to address some questions in the open forum before we actually close the meeting. So at this point, I would like to call on our last reactor from the Master in Public Administration cluster through the PA204 class, Ms. Francis Grace Maristasa.
Hello, Sir Jake. Hello, everyone. Am I audible?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so a pleasant morning to each and everyone. First of all, I would like to extend my gratitude to our equally competent speakers for their valuable inputs in shedding some light regarding this comprehensive topic about EO 138, or also known as the full devolution of certain functions of the executive branch to local governments, creation of a committee on devolution, and for other purposes. Pardon me if I will be repeating some of the points that has been shared already by my co-reactor as my personal takeaway. This is the dilemma of being the last reactor. Allow me also to share with you my screen for my short presentation. Right, so can you see it now? Please. Okay, so let me begin by saying that indeed, change is an inevitable part of our lives. As Robin Sharma put it, change is hard at first, messy in the middle, but gorgeous in the end. The concept of devolution is no longer novel to us since we had the 1991 local government codes. However, when we welcome change, we acknowledge the fact that what was before wasn't perfect and that there's always room for improvement, especially when we are putting governance on the line. The landmark ruling of the Supreme Court on the Mandanas and Garcia case has given us the opportunity for improvement, for growth, as it also enshrined local autonomy. Fundamentally, Executive Order 138 is a means towards the realization of a long-time aspiration of local government units to finally implement full devolution of powers, but with enough funds or resources. This is very important because how are we able to finance our projects with relations to our basic services to be given to the Filipino people if we will not be given enough funds? This would mean that in the years to come, Filipino people has the access for basic services and can expect a high and better quality of services from the government from their respective local government units. Devolution would mean better accessibility in acquiring basic services. However, it is noteworthy that there are no additional functions that has been added to LGUs other than what has already been stipulated in the local government code and the laws relative to it. Ibig sabihin, from 1991, during the first devolution, nasa atin na po yung mga basic services. Only now, it has to be improved and be perfected, hopefully. It would also mean that all local government units within the Philippines will have an equal footing in terms of financial resources to provide the basic services for its people. Therefore, development and progress are expected to happen in every category or classification of local government units. Ang ganda po sana nitong tingnan dahil isa itong pangako ng sabay-sabay na pag-angat. EO 138 is a provision towards a more responsive and accountable local government units. Change always comes with discomfort. Alam natin po yan. Pag pinipresenta sa atin ang isang uri ng pagbabago, marami tayong hesitations. We even have our own share of fears. That's why it is only normal to have questions that seeks for answers and clarity, such as, what assurance does the Filipino citizens have that with this provision being presented to us, it will result to a much efficient and effective delivery of basic services? Kanina po nabanggit na ni Ma'am Sig yung napaka-famous na linya ng Spider-Man. With great power comes great responsibility. This only means that from everyone who has been given much, much will also be demanded. The Executive Order 138 is very timely, not just because of its implementation comes January 2022, but also because of the challenge that is being presented to us with the coming election on May of the same year, which means that a big part of the success of the transitioning process also lies on our decisions of who to put on the seat of power. We need leaders who have the passion and commitment to serve our country and its people based on the principles of ethical and good governance. This is our chance to make the progress, the development happen. This is our share as a citizen, as an ordinary citizen. The significant increase in financial resources of the local government units can be overwhelming as well as intimidating. Overwhelming for those units who do not have the absorptive capacity, and intimidating that if the implementation is not governed properly and effectively, it will result in worsening gaps in service delivery. It is tempting to be simply overjoyed by the idea that the local government units will have an increase of financial resources, but the danger lies on how to manage those resources and turn it into tangible services. In the next 3 years, we will undergo a process or period of devolution transition. With EO 138, the national government agencies and the local government units are instructed to come up with their respective devolution transition plan to ensure that the assumptions of the devolved functions and services will be smooth and aligned with the priorities of the national government. It is noteworthy that we have to remind ourselves this effort is a collaborative effort. We need to work hand in hand to develop and strengthen the capacity of our local government units, even the national government agencies, and even us as ordinary Filipino citizens. We are called to participate actively since we are the ones who will reap the benefits in the end. So, buhay ang Pilipinas. Magandang araw po sa inyong lahat.
Thank you very much, Ma'am Grace, for those insights of yours. That essentially concludes the panel discussion with our reactors. And at this point, we'll be reading the questions gathered from our participants from our YouTube channel and the ADNU CLG Facebook page. So I have here questions. I think majority of this will be directed towards Ma'am Melody. So the first question is from Miss Angela Benjamin. With regards to the preparation of the DTP, only those functions, services, and facilities that the LG will fully assume should be included or listed. Is that correct? For example, in the barangay level, farm-to-market roads are too costly for them to fully assume because it needs millions to construct. It should not be included in their DTP preparation.
Hello, clarify ko lang po. Yung question ay doon sa devolution transition plan, if included or not, yung mga big ticket projects.
Yes, ma'am.
First and foremost, may alignment po sa devolution transition plan as earlier explained. So kailangan yung barangay devolution transition plan, incorporated din po siya sa devolution transition plan of the municipalities in the same manner that the devolution transition plan submitted to the province will also be aligned with that of the provincial government devolution transition plan. So for those projects which will entail a big amount of funds, so it can be arranged between the two local government units involved on who will be assuming most of the fund requirements for that particular project. So for the barangay, usually, ang pinapa-fund lang sa kanila, if ever, yung mga barangay roads na kaya ng kanilang budget. If there are barangay roads po na medyo mahabang stretch at hindi nila kaya and magkoconnect naman siya sa other barangays within the municipality, pwede po siyang ma-include sa devolution transition plan of the municipality or the city concerned. So kaya po, one part of the devolution transition planning ay yung alignment. Magkakaroon po sila ng alignment and linkaging session para po nga ma-clear out yung mga ganong mga types of projects na included in the devolved function but cannot be assumed fully by the concern or by that particular level of local government unit. Thank you. I hope I answered that question comprehensively.
Thank you, Ma'am Melody. So I think the importance there is the alignment and the discussion that should happen between different participants of the full devolution in order for them to get aligned on what should and not included in their submitted DTPs. So the next question, I think it's still for Ma'am Melody. Will it be taken against the local government unit, particularly to barangay levels, if they can't fully assume the devolved function due to financial incapacity? There are some barangays with minimal increase in NTA.
Okay. So it will not be taken against them kasi mayroon naman talagang limitations depende sa provided na resources. And that is where the growth equity fund, as mentioned earlier by RD Agnes, comes in. Pero we still have to wait for the guidelines to be issued by the concerned agencies. So ano po, magdidepende naman po talaga ang devolution transition plan sa provided na resources. And also again, may complementation po yan sa higher LGU.
Thank you, Ma'am Melody. This one is a little bit tactical, but I think it's worth mentioning here. There was a very limited time for the DTP preparation, just in case the DTP submitted by the barangays have errors in it. Is it okay for them to submit the revised forms?
Yes po, yes po. Pwede po.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. And last question from Miss Angela. For the phasing of functions, services, and facilities to be assumed, all PPAs indicated for fiscal year 2022 should be included in the AIP and annual budget for 2022 and must be sufficiently funded po. Tama po ba?
Baka po relative yung sufficient funding. Kaya po may phasing. So, depende po again yan sa gagawing proposal and the available funds na i-decide again by the LGU concerned. That is why po consultative ang devolution transition planning and it has to undergo review by the local sanggunian. Kasi nga po, again, relative ang sufficiency. And I just would like to add on pala doon sa changes, if ever there will be changes in the submitted devolution transition plan. Kasi before you can pause the devolution transition plan, may approval na nun ng sanggunian. So if ever there will be changes, it has to go through again the process of the review and approval of the concerned sanggunian.
Thank you, Ma'am Melody. Another question from Ron J. Mawili. Why is it that the reimbursement of IRA of the LGUs in the national government not updated until 2020?
Actually, there will be no reimbursement. Kaya po prospective. Kaya po prospective ang application ng Mandanas Garcia ruling. So, as earlier po pointed out by Engineer Rex, walang reimbursement. Yung po yung petition na dapat maibalik yung hindi na ibigay sa LGU. But the final decision was
denied yung request na yon, yung claim na yon. But ang nangyari, prospective application to take effect 2022.
Thank you, Ma'am Melody. And I think this is the last question that I have from our participants. The last question is, since LGUs are also asked to include water supply and sanitation projects in their DTPs, how will these activities overlap with water district projects, which I understand are independent from LGUs? Or will this only include LGU independent water supply and sanitation projects like DILG Silent Tubig? Or can we expect more water district expansion projects with the DTPs?
Pagdating po sa water system, ino-honor pa din po natin yung authority of the local water districts kasi meron naman po sila talaga diyang concession rights. So if ever po the LGU will be undertaking water projects, doon po yan sa mga areas within their LGU na wala pang water system. So it does not follow naman po na mag-encroach sila doon sa service area na ng local water district. Meron po yung distinction mark na between the two.
Thank you, Ma'am Melody. And I think that's the last question, if I'm not mistaken.
Jake, can I add something to that?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. As regards those services that are really costly, meaning that it's beyond the budget of our local government units, as a corporate body, treat them as a corporate body. They could actually get into partnership or collaboration with, like in the case of water, with or solid waste disposal. They could always partner with the adjacent municipality so that they'd be able to provide for that service. Now, nothing stops them from doing that. So there could always be an agreement among themselves so that there would be efficiency in the delivery of those costly services.
Thank you for your thoughts, Ma'am Agnes. Actually, it's actually related to the first question, if I'm not mistaken, the point on alignment and discussion between proper stakeholders and how they want to divide these activities among themselves so that it's not included in the DTPs, and yet you can still implement it as part of the strategic plan. So I think that alignment and discussion should happen moving forward. At this point, I think I have no more questions. So I'll be presenting the e-certificates of appreciation for our distinguished speakers. So please allow me to read first the citation of the e-certificates. So Ateneo de NAGA University Graduate School, in coordination with the Center for Local Governance, awards this certificate of appreciation to Agnes E. Tolentino, CESO 3, Regional Director, National Economic and Development Authority, Region 5, in grateful and deep appreciation for sharing her time and expertise as guest speaker during the webinar on full devolution of the local government units and the implication to its services, given this 4th of December 2021 at the Ateneo de NAGA University, Naga City. Signed, Malusi Barceliano, PhD, Dean, Graduate School, Director, ADNU Center for Local Governance, Ateneo de NAGA University. So on behalf of the organizer, Ma'am Agnes, thank you very much for being with us today.
Yeah, thank you too for the invitation.
And the same e-certificate is being awarded to Melody E. Relucio, CESO 5, Provincial Director, Department of Interior and Local Government, Camarines Sur, in grateful and deep appreciation of her time and expertise as guest speaker as well during the webinar on full devolution of the local government units and the implication to its services. Signed, Malusi Barceliano, PhD, Dean of the Graduate School, Ateneo de NAGA University. Again, Ma'am Melody, thank you for being with us today.
Welcome po, and thank you for the opportunity too.
So additionally, our speakers will be receiving a book from the poet Frank Simatu, Ang Mga Posisyon sa Unang Bangungot. ang mga posisyong dumaan sa unang bangungot, I'm sorry, as our token of appreciation. So the book was published in 2018 by Adno Press and recently won the 20th Madrigal Gonzalez Best First Book Award given by the University of the Philippines Institute of Creative Writing. So Ma'am Melody, Ma'am Agnes will be sending the token into your respective offices. So please expect them probably by next week or the week after. Again, thank you very much for your time and being with us today.
Thank you too.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. And finally, the same e-certificates are also given to our reactors. So allow me to read the citation. This Ateneo de Naga University Graduate School, in coordination with Center for Local Governance, awards this certificate of appreciation to Melissa Siglin Bromeo in grateful and deep appreciation of her sharing her time and expertise as a reactor during the webinar on full devolution of the local government units and the implication to its services given this 4th of December 2021 at the Ateneo de Naga University, Naga City, signed by Lucy Barceliano, Dean of the Ateneo de Naga Graduate School. The same e-certificates will also be provided to Mendelssohn Mariano, and then Engineer Rex Resuena, as well as Ma'am Francis Grace Maristasa. So to our reactors, thank you for your time as well. We will be issuing e-certificates as well to our attendees, especially those who have registered and indicated that they are present in the webinar through our online streaming available at the YouTube channel and Facebook page of the Ateneo de Naga Center for Local Governance. We would like to remind our attendees that in order for you to get the certificates, you need to provide feedback on the conduct of the webinar. So before I close the message, I would just like to ask Ma'am Melody and Ma'am Agnes for short words before I close our webinar. I'll go first with Ma'am Agnes.
Okay, thank you, Jake. I'm happy that we have gained new partners among those who are participating in this webinar, partners in implementing effectively our devolution of services to the local government units. As I mentioned earlier, this is not just the work of the government, but would call for everybody's participation. So this early, I'm already thanking you for your contribution or for your participation to the implementation of Executive Order 138. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ma'am Agnes. Ma'am Melody.
Well, thank you for the opportunity once again to be invited in this particular webinar lecture series. So I'm just hoping that with this devolution transition plan, all those that can participate in local governance will do so that the LGUs can benefit also from the technical inputs and technical assistance which can be provided by our practitioners on local governance, the ACA team particularly, and all those students taking up public administration and the graduate school. So thank you very much, and we also welcome engagement like this. Kaya kahit hindi available si RD na mag-engage dito, na ibigay sa akin yung responsibility or yung task to discuss devolution. So sana po talaga sama-sama tayong lahat dito towards better governance and better services for our constituents. Thank you, Ma'am Agnes. Regards, matagal na po nang walang face-to-face sa region.
Thank you too, Ma'am Melody.
Thank you, Ma'am Melody, Ma'am Agnes. So at this point, I would like to, on behalf of the organizing committee as well as the respective students from the PA 204 and MBA 237 classes, we would like to thank the library's tech support for making the live streaming possible and for their assistance, particularly Mr. Sherwin Perez and Mr. Emmanuel Durin of the James O'Brien SJ Library, with the support, of course, of Ma'am Edna San Benaventura, our university librarian. Also, we would like to thank Ma'am Camille Faye Badong from the Center for Local Governance for the endless and tireless support during the planning of this webinar. Finally, we would like to thank the active participation of our attendees from all over the Philippines. We have attendees from the academe, different universities from Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao, as well as members of the private and public institutions. Thank you very much for being with us today, and apologies again for extending the time, but we have to adjust given the so many inputs from our participants. And this webinar is just but one avenue on how we can strengthen information dissemination and acceptance between the community, the academe, and all those who will be involved in the full devolution. As we close this program, we fervently hope that you have gained insights that will help you in responding to the call of the full devolution as articulated by EO 138, and equip you with the resolve to accept the challenge of this change as well. So majority of our participants have been saying that this change is something new and we might have some resistance. So hopefully this webinar provided you with that resolve needed to face this particular challenge. On behalf of the Ateneo de NAGA University Graduate School, its Center for Local Governance, and the MPA and MBA students who conceptualized this service learning event, thank you and good morning. I would just like to share with you before I close this webinar, the link for providing your feedback is available through https /bit.ly/full-dev webinar assessment. So that will be posted as well in our YouTube and Facebook channel for your reference. Again, thank you and good morning.